This is the life cycle of teams.
So the 5 phases of development and decision-making overview, this includes the forming, norming, confronting, performing, and leaving phases. And these phases relate to the 4 components of an interprofessional healthcare team, which was discussed in the last presentation. So that's like the practice, intra-team, organizational, and components necessary for team maintenance over time. And each of the phases listed focus on a specific task or behavior, and they really emphasize different elements within a team model. The 3 most commonly occurring phases are norming, confronting, and performing. Um, this model, however, still includes the forming and leaving phases as they do have big intermittent impacts on an interprofessional team. Um, the recurring leaving phase has the potential to advance or return a team to one of the more commonly occurring phases. So this is dependent on the individual member who leaves the team and whether or not they were positively or negatively impacting the team. Another factor is if the team is able to replace whomever left, like if is the new member going to be responsible to take over the role of the previous member, even if they had a leadership role? And if so, will this like expedite the new member's phase of team development, even if they're not ready to do so? And then administrators or team leaders should recognize if their interprofessional healthcare team is stuck within a specific phase. A team may be stuck in a phase if there's limited resources to adjust the team's work, a lack of guidance in the development of the team, or if there is limited time to fully address the underlying issues. And we'll discuss various interventions for each phase that can be used to address the task-specific issues.
So phase one is the forming phase. It's the first of the 5 phases that a team will complete. It's usually a rushed phase in team building, and it has a lack of identified goals and specific duties. Um, it has a relatively short lifespan because it's typically determined by members' experience with teams and teamwork. Um, and that makes sense because it is just the forming when team members are coming together with a team. On the right side of this slide, you'll see a table. We have one for each of the phases. And these came straight from the textbook, and it has symptoms that the team might be in that phase and interventions for them.
The second phase is the norming phase. Based on other sources, however, the second phase is typically the conflict or storming phase. However, this model has the norming phase as the second phase due to the limited time and resources that healthcare workers typically have to work through their conflicts. So it is implied that healthcare workers are just kind of expected to get to work as soon as possible and not really deal with going through the conflict phase that soon. So if a large conflict does arise in this phase, it typically will just be pushed under the table. So for example, if a team member does not have the appropriate skills for the job, it will not be immediately addressed. It'll just kind of be put to the side for the time being. It is very common for healthcare teams to be stuck within this phase, and this is because if a team continuously pushes their conflicts under the table, they're more likely to try and protect their peace by kind of retreating into their discipline-specific ways rather than truly trying to resolve their conflicts. In this phase, as the phase progresses, teams may strive for equality and leadership. However, this could cause many issues as teams might try and promote rotating leadership roles to different professionals who are maybe uninterested or ill-suited to lead the team in a cohesive and efficient manner. So this might lead to competitions between disciplines to try and reassert their role within the team, which then would cause further conflicts that are harder to kind of try and brush under the table and would ultimately lead them to the next phase, which is the conflict phase. Oh, and then these is another part of the norming chart that talks about the symptoms and the interventions that a healthcare team can implement to try and decrease the effects of the symptoms.
So phase three is the confronting phase, and this is when that conflict does break out, whether it's confronted in a constructive or non-productive manner will dictate whether the team moves into the performing phase. This is also a phase where informal leaders emerge, allowing for opportunity to engage in problem solving. Um, Conflict can and should be productive. It can lead to growth, improvements, and better overall care. And it is a necessary part for team growth because it does lead to that problem solving. Um, and in an effective team, productive confrontations become the norm for all disciplines to take part, individuals overpowering other team members.
Phase 4 is the performing phase, and this is when conflicts are directed at the system or program development rather than individual members of the team. So the team begins to view conflicts as an opportunity to grow and learn from them to promote the effectiveness of the team. Each member's uniqueness and differences begins to add value to the team, so members are able to trust one another and they are able to appreciate their differences. And when there are constant changes, a healthcare team does not stay within this phase for long. Teams only visit this phase occasionally.
Phase five is the leaving phase, also known as the adjourning phase, for when a group disbands upon completion of a project or task. Um, Leaving may be temporary or permanent, and it may involve one or multiple members of a team. And that's because when one member leaves, the entire team doesn't necessarily disband. So one member may be in the leaving phase, and the rest of the team might be in a different phase. When important team members, such as leaders, leave the team, this is reflected in how much the team struggles to take their place and function in an organized and effective manner.
So, individual and team movement through the phases. Individual members and the team may continue to recycle through the phases as they encounter personal and professional changes. And since teams are a dynamic process that continuously changes, individual members often find themselves in different phases than the rest of the team. So the phase in which the individual perceives themselves to be in might also be dependent on the amount of time that they have been a part of the team. So for example, someone who has been a long time member might not have an accurate understanding of their personal phase of their development in comparison to the team because they might just perceive themselves to be exactly what the team is. But for someone who is working part-time, they might be stuck in the forming or norming phase due to their kind of reluctance to buy into being a part of the team. And then this picture over to the right is from the textbook, and there are four figures within the textbook that represent various stages of an interprofessional healthcare team. However, this figure is the one that represents a well-functioning team. So each of the little stick figures represents a member of the team as they progress through the phases. And where a majority of the stick figures are depicted represents the phase in which the team is in. So within this picture, it's showing that this well-functioning team is within the performing phase. And then it also is representing the depth of culture this team has due to their ability to work through their problems with respect and maturity. And so I had found an article by Adam that found that recognizing and consciously managing the phases of team dynamics, along with implementing appropriate training, communication, and feedback practices, substantially contribute to team development and effectiveness. So the study further emphasized the importance of raising awareness of the various team phases among the members and introducing development programs that promote effective communication and the regular feedback, especially during team building events. And then they found that it truly helps to foster trust and enhance internal team understanding. So, having the awareness and an understanding of the other team members and their perspective of kind of where they are through the developmental phases will allow for them to achieve that well functioning status.
So, efficiency within a team, there are many causes for inefficiency. It could be time constraints, it could be available resources, high costs, patient follow through. It could be a focus on short-term outcomes or difficulty measuring long-term global outcomes or not selecting correct disciplines. And there are solutions to these, including interplay between individual disciplines and the organization of a team, defining the scope of a problem and not doing so too narrowly or too broadly, and identifying the fewest disciplines needed. One article investigated components to decrease the high costs of the healthcare system, with the main component being to maximize interprofessional team performance. Members of a team completed a behavioral tendency questionnaire, which enabled them to better understand and become aware of their colleagues' tendencies. The team was able to use the common language derived from the questionnaire as a tool for effective communication and interprofessional relationship navigation. It was discussed that the team's ability to utilize the common language to accelerate to the norming stage and avoid team dysfunction or the storming phase. Team members found that using this common language enabled them to express their feelings and ask for a solution that supported the team's function and increases team productivity, with the team spending a majority of their time in the norming and performing phases. This aids in increasing team collaboration to promote productivity while reducing overall costs. And there can be tame and wicked problems within a team. Tame problems refer to easily defined ones. They have predictable outcomes. They can be quantified, measured, and replicated, and they can and should be efficiently resolved or accomplished. Wicked problems, on the other hand, may have more than one explanation. They can be a symptom of another problem. They don't resolve with simple interventions, and they require input from multiple disciplines due to their multifaceted nature. Um, so these problems lie on a continuum. Not all problems are necessarily tame or wicked. Um, and that's why it's necessary for practitioners to learn and accurately assess what the problems are and how to appropriately resolve them.
And then these are our facilitation questions. And then these are our resources.